I've been in the human capital side, the operations side. I've been on the IT side. I've been in curriculum and instruction. So hopefully today's conversation brings some clarity into how educational systems and dynamics and all of those things work, especially as we're talking about the topic of today.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ron Roberts. I'm VP of School Partnerships at Alpha School. My background is at the intersection of civics, culture, and technology. I got my start early in Los Angeles working on Skid Row at the Union Rescue Mission. I was a board member when I was like 12 years old, doing community service work. Parlayed that into working in entertainment under Scooter Braun when I was like 18 years old for his youth activism fellowship. So a lot of the work that I've been doing over the course of my life has been empowering young people and figuring out how to leverage influence for good and informing the future for equitable and abundant future for young people. So excited to be here.
Well, mine is not as good as his. But I am the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. It's a consulting firm here in Austin. In my previous life, I worked in the state legislature, so how to get funding, policy, all that into the school districts where Dr. Rodriguez works specifically. And for over 15 years, I've been a consultant working with the public sector and the private sector. So my expertise come more of from a federal, state funding, grants, and how do we get information technology into the schools. So, thank you.
All right, excellent. So for a century, education has been limited by the ratio of one teacher, 30 students, sometimes even more. So Gen AI has, as you know, or may not know, is really breaking that bottleneck, right? And so we're moving from an era of scarcity to one of abundance. This is more than just a new tool, and we now have an opportunity to redefine the baseline for education. The essential choice is no longer yes or no to AI or not, but rather, do we do this chaotically, or do we integrate seamlessly? This panel is going here to explore how we can stop fighting the future and start engineering a renaissance where technology handles the data and infrastructure, freeing up the teachers to handle the humanity of education. We're going to focus on a path to a safe, scalable, and equitable AI integration into the school districts in Austin and beyond. So to start, let's go down the panel and just set our baseline here of discussing the purpose of school.
Okay.
No, we can start it.
Testing. All right. So I'm going to be vulnerable here and talk about the purpose of education. Education changes lives. Education is the great equalizer. I'm a first generation. My parents immigrated here with a 3rd grade and 6th grade education, and I now hold a doctorate. So beside all of the hard work, it's the power that education has. It's the power that educators, my 3rd grade ELA teacher that stayed on me to push me to expect more expectations. Those are the things that public education, that education has to change the lives. She taught me, taught my brother, taught my youngest brother, taught my sister, retired, taught my niece and nephew. And so it's the power of those kinds of educators. It's that ability to change the trajectory of not just the student life, but the family life that I believe is one of the great things that public education brings.
Hello. The purpose of school. So, as you know, school is like a training ground for life, right? We all have our early experiences with breakups and social issues and all that. It just prepares you for life. Also to be commercially viable, right? To be prepared for a future of work, to be able to, like you said, create a future for yourself, to be able to make money, to be able to do a lot of things that make you a participating member of society. And so, yeah, that's my definition for what the purpose of school is, for sure.
Edgar?
Very similar to Dr. Rodriguez, first generation Mexican American. My parents came over here, and similar, you had a 3rd grade teacher. I had a 5th grade teacher that changed the trajectory of my life. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have pursued college. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have pursued where I want to be and where I want to be now. So I owe it all to the education system. I was fortunate enough to be in public school, and those teachers did change my whole career. So to me, it is like you said, Dr. Rodriguez, the great equalizer.
Thanks for sharing that, guys. Those are all really personal stories that speak, again, to the humanity of education and where the AI renaissance can help set students up for success, and can enable and empower those educators who provide lifelong impact to grow and continue their work. So with that, we're going to shift a little bit into the finances of things. I started my career in finance, so maybe that's where that comes from. But so we're looking, why is a wait and see approach not where we need to go? So what is the wait and see approach to AI adoption in education, and why is that so risky and expensive of a strategy? Do you want to cover that, Edgar? Or start?
Yeah, so everybody knows that in the public sector, it takes forever to get anything done. We all know that. If you guys are not familiar, it always starts with commercial, then, public sector is always going to be 10 years behind. And the reason is because a lot of these folks at the district level, superintendents, they're all risk adverse. They don't want to take the risk. If something goes wrong, they're ultimately responsible, and they don't want to lose their jobs. So part of it goes with how do we become more progressive in our decision making? How do we get better educated? And at the end of the day is how do we get those fundings? If, we've been very reactive in the public sector instead of being proactive. And if we do not catch up, we're going to get left behind, and we're going to try to catch up in 20 years. Every time the public sector tries to do that, they're going to have to throw more money into the problem, meaning raising taxes, school property, and all that, because they need to catch up. So from my perspective, in public sector, working at the state legislature, working with the private sector, it's always been the case. When I take folks to visit Dr. Rodriguez as CTO in Austin, Edgar, I would love to do this, but I don't have the money. And if we do not focus on that right now, we're gonna have this conversation in 20 years.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Did you want to add something, Ron?
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, sure. So we were just covering, what the highest risks are, and where the expense piece comes into this.
I'll address the risk part. I think
Yeah.
everything is at stake. And I'll back up. I dropped out of high school when I was 17. I have a GED. I tested out, so a little bit different than fellow panelists. Bit renegade in that way. But, the reason why I dropped out is because I was paying attention to the future of work. I was looking at LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, you need 2-3 years of experience for an entry-level job position? How am I going to do that if I go to college? And, how does that work, right? And, I was already seeing that it was getting really, really competitive and that, hirees and, hiring whatever job, corporations were prioritizing expertise and actual tangible experience above certificates and credentials for certain industries. And so that was the best decision I ever made in my life was to get to work as soon as possible. And then I think about the time where we are right now, right? Where self-improving AI is better than it's ever been. By the time our 10-year-old kids, 12-year-old, 15-year-old kids get into the workforce, we can't even fathom what these roles are going to be, right? And so if we can't even think about, it's not technical skills that we can give them to be able to be prepared for the future of work, then the environment that we have to create for them is fundamentally just making sure that they have all the humanistic things, the soft skills, the raw material to be able to participate. One of those being a limitless imagination, right? Because when AI can do everything, task, right, and the technical parts, you just need to be able to think, right? You just have the right thinking. You need to have the right soft skills. You have to have all. So, but if our institutions, public, private schools, et cetera, are not creating an environment for limitless imagination because it's a Parisian system that prioritizes obedience and compliance and all these kind of things, then fundamentally their growth is stunted. And so everything is at stake, everything is at risk when the container is not conducive for where the future is actually going. And that's really my perspective on that.
Yeah, so I'll speak for the institution. Ultimately, a lot of my background has been in urban districts. We tend to be the largest transportation providers in the city. We tend to be the largest landowners. We tend to serve the most meals, yet we are not chain restaurants. We are not transportation companies. We serve students. And so at the end of the day, there's one core measure that all districts are measured, all public educations, and that's student outcomes. And so I do agree that there has to be a proactiveness, especially given the opportunity of this technology, to adapt that the way that education happens, both on the business side as well as the instructional side, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to support student outcomes, and that may mean adjusting and evolving and adapting and fighting what we affectionately call Tawadi, right? This is the way we have always done it, Tawadi, which is hard, but I think that's where the humanistic aspect, and that's where I think leadership has to be part of this piece to lead that evolution, that adaptation within the institutional components, because organizations, especially large organizations, Dallas ISD was 20,000 staff, Austin ISD is 10,000 staff. To lead change of that magnitude requires leadership and seeing the future. So I do agree, appreciate those points. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And so, if you are an Austin local, you may have heard simple, standard, and secure. And so that is the multifaceted approach to disruptive innovation that using AI and innovation is moving us towards, right? And that is the foundation of everything that Austin ISD and, as expected, the other ISDs are looking towards as well, right? So sustainable education systems. And so we've already touched on resources, and thanks for leading us into the next question here. So we've got AI creating abundance in education, but how do we make sure that that abundance doesn't widen the gap between the well-funded districts and those already struggling with resources and digital infrastructure? Edgar, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, so when it comes to equity, you need to define AI. What is it for you? Is it a luxury tool? Or are you going to make it a core educational infrastructure? Once you decide that, then you can start moving forward to the state and the district need to prioritize broadband access, connectivity, right? Then how do you secure student data? That is one of the most problematic things when it comes is data, personal data. And then it comes to the training. How do you train all the teachers across all the districts so they all have the same, right? Once you get to those decisions, if public sector and the state legislature and the districts, once they figure that out, then it comes to the policy, okay? They did a fairly good job when it comes to one-on-one devices for the most part. The broadband access has been increased tremendously. We actually funded close to $1 billion in last mile for this fiscal year. Once you have all of that, then it comes to the policy. It comes to the trust and setting those parameters for the students on how do you secure that data. I think by doing that, the state can narrow that gap when it comes to school districts. So hopefully they take that into consideration, and I'm pretty certain that the next biennium in the Texas legislature, we meet every 2 years. We'll be meeting in January 2027 is when it starts. AI, I was fortunate enough to participate in the ethics AI bill during last session. So we're hoping that the next year we have a similar bill that can help public education.
Yeah, so I definitely agree about understanding the full sort of pathway from, instruction in the classroom to where our students live. And I think that's where I appreciate the partnership. Schools districts cannot solve all the problems in and of themselves. We exist in the broader fabric of society, but school districts are not ISPs, nor should we be, right? That is not our skill set. And I think that's where, from a larger perspective, pushing for data standards, pushing for interoperability, those things that are required to be able to facilitate teaching and learning in our classrooms without being the experts in a lot of those fields, and looking at an ecosystem perspective. So I appreciate the support. We've been working with the Travis County Office of Broadband and Digital Equity to build out a systemic, sustainable ecosystem approach to supporting our students. Because at the end of the day, again, campus districts are they're not technology firms. The external pressures on public education, from a funding perspective, I don't know from your local context, but here in Texas, it's been a little tough here in the last couple of years, and so we've had to adapt and really focus on what are our core competencies. I've had leadership meetings where I've told my team very clearly, do not come to me and ask for a database manager or some other technical position when we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough strong instructional coaches, when we don't have enough counselors. And so definitely getting support from a broader perspective, understanding where nonprofits, NGOs, for-profits fit in that broader ecosystem to support the educational outcomes, I think is going to be an important conversation, especially with this sort of focus on AI, on how those initiatives become ingrained. I agree, it isn't a tool, it is just the way that things get done in public education, as well as that external support to making sure that we have a full system that supports the outcomes of all of our students.
I was just gonna say, I think we need a unified perspective. Firstly, before we start to even think about the details. And what I mean by that is everyone has to agree that the AI fundamentally is better at administering gen ed classes than a teacher is at this point in time. That's the foundation. If that's not the first point of agreement, then we don't have anything. We don't have a starting point, right? So everything offshoots from there, broadband, policy, funding. Because if at the top we're having a conversation and you fundamentally don't understand that the role of a teacher has evolved and should evolve, just because of where we are, then what do you do from there, right? Because then we're going to be fixing the wrong type of problem. I'll give you an example. I was consulting for a public school district here in Texas, and they were focused on 50 years. And I was like, we can't even think in times of 50. Why are we starting at 50 years? We have to, they're like, oh, we don't want to participate in AI. And I'm like, what? What does that even mean? First of all, yeah. Can we agree that yes, a teacher needs to focus on the soft skills, the coaching elements, and that's why at Alpha School we have something called a guide, right? We outsource all of our gen ed classes to the AI because they can do a better job at reading the data, seeing where the holes are in a kid's education and filling those gaps and meeting them where they are. The alternative, which has been true since forever, is that the teacher just teaches to the median of the class, right? So you have some people who are advanced in, say, 6th grade English, and some people who are in 3rd grade English, right? But this is a 4th grade class. Well, let's say this is a 4th grade class. Some people are at 6th grade level, some people are at 3rd grade level, some people are at grade level, but the teacher is going to teach at grade level. You lose people in wherever they are. It's just if you're too advanced, you tune out. If you're not up to speed, then you tune out. And then this is the necessity for after school tutoring and stuff in the first place, or extra, support, right? And so I think that's the baseline thing to first of all have in place.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, at the
go
risk, this is
ahead.
not a debate, but I definitely agree that there is a place for AI. I think, understanding what goes on in educational classrooms, teachers do need support, and I think that's where AI can be supportive and differentiated. I think when we look at teachers or educators, you got to look at the teacher pipeline. You got to look at the fact that folks are not majoring in, how many educational majors here? Please raise your hand. Right.
We have one.
Right. So when we think about the teacher pipeline, when you think about the entry points, the skill sets, I didn't major in education. I was a business major, but it's the entry point and the supports. I do agree that there has to be something to support your brand new teacher. If I had had AI when I first started teaching, I'm sure my students from then would have much appreciated it. But I think that's where AI, I agree, can be the coach, can be the support, because it takes time. And the idea of learning instruction, I think AI can definitely be that support for teachers as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from both of you, from all of you, right, is that we have the foundation that we can build to have a standardized approach utilizing AI, but our teachers are where that specialty skill comes in and where that human touch, the actual guidance of the students who are here or the students who are here, we can differentiate and bring together that equity. And we've also touched on the security and the ethics, right? So we have the Texas legislature with their ethics legislation that you said was put in already.
Yes.
That was voted on already. And then we have the individual school districts as well who their goal, and out of necessity really, is to personalize the experience of the Gen AI and to help the teachers to implement and give the teachers those tools to move forward and to integrate for their students. So we've focused on the happy, right? So and this is open to anyone, what is one of the biggest mistakes that you have seen of implementation so far?
You want to?
So most of my recent career has been around digital transformations. When I first came to Austin, one of the first projects I was handed as part of my transition into the role, nobody leaves you a handbook, nobody leaves you a manual, nobody leaves you a checklist, was to implement an ERP system. And if you know anything about ERPs in K-12, is that can be the single most disruptive, problematic issue. When bus drivers and teachers don't get their paychecks, you will be on the news. And so understanding that sort of comment about culture eats strategy for breakfast is absolutely true. The biggest mistake you can make is not understanding the culture of public education, not understanding the culture of your particular district, understanding its values. While we're talking about technology, the fact is that we're also talking about the human element, that a lot of these changes don't get affected if we're not considering where people are at and how we bring them along. And so I think the biggest mistake could be looking at this as a tool, looking at it as something separate, looking without understanding the value proposition for the folks that are being impacted. What problems does AI solve for an instructional coach, for a principal, for a teacher? And so I think it's on whatever the leadership team is cross-functionally to consider these initiatives, is understanding the cultural dynamics of the organization that you're targeting to ensure that you're getting the best outcomes.
I couldn't have said that any better. Yeah, I was like, yeah, exactly.
Mine's a little bit different. Mine's more on the technical side. And the biggest problem that I've seen across multiple state agencies, higher ed, K through 12, is the problem with their data governance. In order for you to have a successful AI implementation or for the AI to actually do its job, you need to have correct data and where you're gathering that data. So data governance is of the utmost importance when you're establishing artificial intelligence.
That would have been my number 2.
So a lot of the work that I was doing at Alpha School is taking our software and integrating it into public school districts and private schools. That process of even starting a pilot program looks different for both of those kinds of organizations because it's a cultural difference. And so the questions that they have, the things that they're concerned about are fundamentally different. Their resources are fundamentally different. And so you know, like I have this little philosophy that like, well, if you're coming from a low income community like myself, I come from Compton, South Central, the education experience is just fundamentally different because I need education to make me money to change my reality right now, right? And it becomes a 12-year hope, a 16-year hope if I go to college, right? Of like, you know, I'm not in the financial situation that is okay. School is my, I hope, and I don't have any examples around me more times than not. They're going to reinforce that this is the thing that I should be doing and spending my time on. That's going to change my reality, right? It's different for a kid that's from a private school because if they're given a better foundation and more security, especially financially, and the reality is different, they can be more explorative. They can be more curious. They can fail faster and longer, and there's a lot more grace, right? And so the risk is just different, right? In terms of tinkering, like this is like tinkering on my livelihood versus tinkering into filling into and having grace in a safety net that can catch me. And so the sensitivities around those decisions of changing curriculum become magnified when you're talking to different types of people. So that was just like my echo of, guess, what you're saying.
And real quick, so we want to make sure that we leave time for questions. We've got one final one. We've touched on the ethics, but keeping it with the data piece. And as the AI systems that are implemented are gathering more data, not only giving data that it's already been trained on, but also ultimately gathering data on student behavior and performance, use cases with teachers. How are the districts or the state legislature specifically trying to protect student and teacher privacy while still leveraging that data to personalize the approaches?
So yes, as the person that would get that call at 2 a.m. if there was ever a catastrophic data event, data privacy and data security is top of mind. So as you heard the comment earlier, simple, standard, secure. That is how we lead our transformation, simplifying the experience for our end users, standardizing across all of our functions, and first and foremost, ensuring that we have data security as the foundation. And so I think with regards to AI, it's, and I think it's a military term, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so taking a thoughtful approach, taking an approach that considers all of the risks, understanding what frameworks there are. So we work with larger national organizations such as COSIN, which is the National sort of Council for CTOs, and they've helped develop a readiness framework that, you know, allows school districts to sort of understand where they are in their journey. And so, you know, the reality is that data security is everyone's responsibility and role. And so I think we've done, you know, from our context is look at our ecosystem. We've looked at systems that allow us to do what we call walled gardens that ensure data privacy first and foremost. You know, I think the education and the culture piece, right? We are, as part of our responsible use policy, always educating teachers about please don't put student data in your chat GPT. Please don't, right? And so, but we also understand that the demands on them. And so we've given them that safer alternative. We've guided them. We've provided them resources to move them in that direction because that is first and foremost one of the major responsibilities of any district is protecting the privacy and security of all of our stakeholders' data.
To echo what Dr. Rodriguez was saying, we're fortunate here in the state of Texas that we are standing a cyber command. It's going to be the largest cybersecurity agency in the country, really. And their primary focus is to help secure those districts that have one CIO or one technology director. They don't have a chief information security officer. Is to help teach and help secure that data. There's a couple of things. When it comes to student data and HIPAA, healthcare, that is the most protected data. If something were to happen, you would be, Dr. Rodriguez would be in the news. It would be very bad. So security data is extremely important. And at the state level, there's going to be a couple of bills to reinforce that next legislative session. And along with Cyber Command, I think it'll help augment how do you secure data. We also have a couple of regional security operations centers in South Texas. There's one in San Angelo, and there's one in, I forget where the other one is. But those also help augment the less fortunate, the folks that don't have, the school districts, the state agencies that are really small. They help them get their security in place. So hopefully, moving forward, there's, it used to be construction and transportation used to take most of the funding at the state level and Medicaid and Medicare. Now we've seen a lot of money being thrown into the information technology. So hopefully next year in the state, they do the same.
All right, excellent. So again, we want to make sure that we open up the panel for questions from the audience. So now's the time. Oh, we've got one back here.
I've got a few for you guys, but I won't go guard the whole time.
Do we want to?
So,
Hold on, we've got a mic
there
for
we
you,
go.
I think.
Thanks. I'm already starting to lose my voice from South by. It's not a good sign. I've not been in the education system for a long time, and fortunately, I got to see the boom of social media. I mean, I remember being a kid and waiting for dial-up. Like, it's amazing how quickly things have changed. How young and how early are students, kids, starting to play with AI? And then, what are they doing with it? Right? What are the exciting things they're doing with it? And what are the scary things that they're doing it from your perspectives?
So, great question. Again, because of the data privacy, data security, we work with partners that follow a lot of the COPA, SIPA regulations, and so the age requirements. And so at this point, for our district, we have one pilot in our secondary campus, and that pilot is actually not with generative, but with another tool. And so recently, because of all things financial, we consolidated all of our technology systems over to Google. So our district is a Google workspace. We have all the productivity tools. We use Meet instead of Teams. And so we're piloting the use of Notebook LM. And so that tool allows students to upload their information, documents and such, and then do things like mind maps, study cards, those things that from a tool set perspective will help them with their journey. But I think this is one of those situations where from our district lens, we've bifurcated our AI strategy. No one's going to argue with me if I can automate the work of, let's say, a data analyst. I don't have to ask for permission on that. But anything that touches students, anything that has any tangent to what happens in our classroom, that is a measure 3 times cut once situation. And so that is where the bifurcation of that strategy allows us to have some momentum, because there is no stopping this, there is no keeping it, but it allows us to be very intentional about how we roll out this, get lessons learned, so that maybe once we get to a point where students are being effective, then we can scale that and standardize that as an experience across all of our campuses.
I was going to answer real quick. So when people use the word AI, it's just such an umbrella term, right? There's like generative AI, you have like everyday ChatGPT, and I'll just talk about the use case at Alpha School that we're seeing. The way that we use AI is that essentially kids take a map test, the standardized test. When you get the map test scores back, you usually get like 2 pages or 2 or 3 pages. There's so much more metadata that is available from testing to see where your holes are in your knowledge. And we just basically take that, feed it into AI to see exactly where your foundational knowledge gaps are, and then administer curriculum according to that. And so the experience is not a chat bot. It's not even, the student isn't even interfacing with AI. We're just leveraging AI to be specifically meeting the student where they are. And so I think that is a really responsible use case. I don't endorse like using ChatGPT for curriculum and all those kind of different things inside or outside of the classroom. I think that, it could create a way for cheating and atrophying your brain and critical thinking skills and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
What I think go ahead.
No, I can't speak about students. I don't have students. But I do lead a research team at Strategic Partnerships. And one of the things when we started implementing AI into our utilization, one of the first things that I was seeing is that the research analyst wasn't analyzing the research. I was just getting pure ChatGPT responses. So that became a problem. And when we have clients that are paying us a lot of money to do research projects, we want to make sure that we are analyzing. So one of the things that we've implemented is AI is a tool, and you still have to do your analyzing yourself. So if you can utilize AI as a tool to augment whatever you're going to do, that's just how we're using it. And I feel like it applies to schools as well.
And I don't have students, but I do have children. And my daughter recently had to make a meme on the cellular structure and what the different pieces. So everyone knows the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? And but the tool that she was using to create the meme uses AI in the background. So it's not only the big, dangerous, sometimes scary things that we're trying to regulate, but we have to also understand that we have to meet the children where they are. And AI is, in education, is no longer optional. And I thought it was a really great way for the students, for the teachers to connect the curriculum with the students and meet them where they are. Next question, we had a few. Here.
I can just speak.
Oh, here.
Test. Okay. So as most of us know, the sort of parental involvement in education is a major factor in increasing the likelihood of favorable outcomes for students. So I'm curious to know how, what kinds of sort of parental empowerment or onboarding are you guys seeing, and how do you envision helping the parents be able to cultivate the use of AI and also educate them on how they can be helpful?
And I'm sorry, just quick note, we have 5 minutes left, so quick answer from each panel so everyone gets a chance to respond.
Sure. So we know that actually from a lot of the information we've gotten, parents are the ones that resist AI adoption the most. So we've created an AI council that our parental involvement is designed to build parent education around AI and responsible use, because when we're talking about technology, it's also responsible use, data privacy, data citizenship. So we're folding all of that into a parental education initiative that teaches parents about all the things in technology.
And I also, it was part of the parent onboarding, which is getting them acclimated with what the actual use case that I just explained of AI is, and not whatever their misconceptions are of whatever they think AI is, right? So it's not like, hey, we're generating courses, we're on ChatGPT all day, and we're like, this is the new super Quizlet, and we're just cheating. Like, no, it's like, no, this is how we use the AI, and walking through. And so that's all I can speak to is like.
I agree with Ron.
Yeah.
Thanks for keeping that last question short. That last answer. Excellent. So, yeah, again, the baseline that we're looking at here is we are at a technology renaissance, but the foundation here is keeping it simple, standard, and secure. I think everyone's going to be around after the panel, at least for a little while. If you're not rolling right into another panel, we can meet in the hallway. And I know we didn't get a chance to get to everyone's questions, so thank you for having so many questions.